Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We're announcing our newest author in our Mission Matters Business Leaders series. His name is Kevin Scudder, and he's the owner at Seattle Collaborative Law Center. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Adam. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right, Kevin. So I'm excited to get into some of the content along the lines of what you'll present in this next book. And just for everybody watching, just so you know, we'll be bringing Kevin on for another interview where we'll do a deep dive into his writing. But today we'll tease it a little bit because we still want to bring Kevin back on. And we also want you to pick up a copy of that book. But we'll start this episode, Kevin, the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Kevin, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Kevin, what mission matters to you?
The mission that matters for me is changing the way law is practiced in the Pacific Northwest. As we were discussing in the green room before this meeting, I'm from the Midwest. My dad was an attorney, and taught me a lot. I ended up in Seattle in 1984, practiced law a certain way for over 20 years, which was a litigation model. And then I came across collaborative practice. And, that really was an epiphany for me. And that's really what my book is based on. The concept of let it begin with me, because if I can't rely on external things to keep me going. It's the inner work that I think is really important, was important for me, but also important for our readers.
So I want to stick in these early years a little bit longer here. So when you were making that shift to the concept of collaboration, or also the Collaborative Law Center, like tell us a little bit more about that. Like, what does that look like? Because I don't want to assume that people understand like what that looks like in terms of different ways of practicing law.
Sure. So, when I was growing up in Omaha, my dad was the legal aid attorney for Omaha, Nebraska. And he and my mom raised 6 kids, never making more than 40 grand a year.
Wow.
And, tried to make as much available to us as possible. Also growing up in Omaha, I grew up long hair, liberal, and Jewish, which is an interesting combination. And so I did my 18 years in Omaha. After that, I ended up in Massachusetts, and I was studying comparative religious studies as a result of being called a dirty Jew when I was 18 years of age. And I was like, I didn't get it, about how people can use an other, to work their way through life. So I ended up in Seattle in 1984, and I tried, to be honest, Adam, I tried not to be a lawyer. I tried as hard as I could because I did not want to follow in my father's footsteps. And I tried late night cooking. I tried Army Navy surplus retail. And then I said, okay, it's time, 26 years of age, time to get, down to it. Went to law school. And I came out and I litigated family law matters for over 20 years. And it got to this point of like, holy smokes, I'm really pretty unhappy doing this work. And this work, every morning I would put on my armor and pick up my sword and shield and go into the Coliseum. And I would have to like call people bad parents or attorneys, unethical attorneys. And then in 2008 was the time of my epiphany. And I came to my first collaborative introductory training, and I had this visceral sense of coming home to the work that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And it was that concept of let it begin with me. And so I had a vision of a collaborative law center. And the collaborative approach is where litigation is a win-lose situation, And the fact is, our court systems here in the state of Washington, and I believe in other places, are set up that there really isn't justice.
Mm-hmm.
That parties who are looking for a resolution um, don't go to court to get it, basically. And so I had to retrain myself, and I had to fill up my toolbox with these collaborative concepts of, the attorneys stepping aside, let the clients make their own decisions. They're competent. If you get them good information, okay, you give them an opportunity of creating a legacy. They create a financial legacy. They create a legacy for their children, for their grandchildren, for their friends. And so in 2010, 2 years after I took my introductory training, I laid down my sword and shield, and I've done no contested hearings since 2010. And all of my work is based on collaborative work and mediation and helping folks out of court create their resolutions.
If I can keep you in that moment in time of that epiphany a little longer, because I feel like many times people have epiphanies or they want to make these transitions or shifts and they don't necessarily follow through always. Like, how were you able to stick with it, really? Because you were trained in the other thing for so long. Like, how were you able to make that? Because that's like a real shift.
Yeah, and this actually goes to my writing, which we'll talk about later. But I think it's the three C's that I talk about. It's the curiosity, it's creating the competence, and then having the courage, Adam, to say, you know what, this business model is not sustainable. It's not going to get me to where I go, and having the courage to shift in midstream. So, it's like building a community. We talk about the collaborative community, the two C's there. But finding, it's just diving off the board into the pool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't it? It has to be, because that was not a light decision. I'm guessing that the people around you, whether it was family, whether it was peers, they must have been like, Kevin, are you okay? Like, because your peer group, like, it's a big shift.
It is, and it's interesting how much fear there was in those around me, Adam. I mean, family members, kids of, brothers, sisters. I've got 5 brothers, sisters, my dad, my mom.
And it doesn't mean that people weren't supportive. It's just like they're genuinely like, Kevin, are you okay? Like, what do you mean you're not going to be in court? You're not going to be doing this, especially 20 years of doing things a certain way. When you shift, it's like, you haven't, like, what's going on, right?
It is interesting because, they're saying, Kevin, you're good at that.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you're making a good living doing that. Why aren't you sticking with that? And, it's that belief that you can be bigger and better and more fulfilling in this line of work. So really it was, and it's the internal energy, Adam. It's really the mission matters things. Is that mission was so strong and continues to be so strong in me that people are drawn to me, clients are drawn to me as a result of my belief in this mission. And I think you'll find that with a lot of your other authors, is that when, I talk about a practice signature. My practice signature is working from my core values, knowing what my personal attributes are, and being authentic. Okay, because I carry those things with me every day in this work, and this work allows me to do that, whereas the litigation work of 20 years didn't allow me to be my authentic self. I had to put on a mask and pretend to be someone else. So now I get to be myself, and I get to live my values. And it's been fascinating watching it all come together, because like I said, in 2008, I had this vision of a collaborative law center. And it took me until 2018 to open up the doors of the Seattle Collaborative Law Center. And, now here I am, and here we are. And I now have 2 associate attorneys. I have 3 legal assistants, and the phone just keeps ringing. Because we offer something people want.
It's a great story, and so how does the not to like minimalize it by any means, but like how do you go from idea to like execution on this? Because you mentioned obviously some years past, but it's not easy just because you want to make that decision to make it happen right after that. And the reason I asked, by the way, is because a lot of entrepreneurs watching this, right? A lot of other individuals,
Right.
whether they're professions that have to do with law, financial advisors, or that tech startup, like lots of different variations there. But how do you get to that point of execution?
That's another great question. Is number one thing is you know what you know, and you also don't know what you don't know.
I wish I had it.
Right?
It
So,
sounds obvious, but does anybody like really think about what Kevin just said? It's like you got me sweating over here. Go ahead.
but right, exactly. So, but this is where the courage comes in of
Hmm.
saying, I know people in my community who mentored me in my collaborative work, made me a
Mm.
better collaborative professional.
Yeah.
I knew the guy who had purchased the Seattle Collaborative Law Center URL,
Mm.
okay, and the name, and then I'm fine on the business side of things. I'm fine with the execution of the work product.
Mm-hmm.
But Adam, the social media, the financing, the all those things are is just really just having the courage to pick up the phone and saying, hey, what don't I know that I need to know as I
Yeah.
open up the doors of this business,
Mm.
and make it the gem that I want it to be.
Mm.
So it's been, I continue to learn,
Mhm.
and continue to bring on social media, reaching out, writing my own book. Thank you for the opportunity, by the way, to put my thoughts in writing, because
Mm.
you guys made it very easy for me to do so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, our pleasure. Like honestly, what you're doing, it's really innovative, and the way I see it is that you're an advocate of really of making win-win solutions at the end of the day, and especially in this particular space that you're working in, the idea of coming through mediation and collaboration to come to great ends. I mean, it's a great story, and it's one that we can all. I mean, sometimes the law profession doesn't always get the best rap, we'll say, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
it can be done a different way is the way that I'm not saying that everything that's being done now is like inherently bad. I'm not like saying that, but the point is that in every industry, whether it's something with a legacy such as law or, like I said earlier, the next tech startup or whatever else, like there's always rooms to innovate. And it might sound kind of counterintuitive because collaboration's such an old idea, but I feel like the way that you're doing it and the way that you're kind of implementing in your practice and even making that the core of the practice, that is innovative.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to, the perception of lawyers in our community, in
Yeah.
our society, is really interesting, because I used to golf before I um,
Before you
started
became
working so
yeah.
much, and then had a knee replacement. But I would always pick up with people, and I would say, "Hey, I'm a lawyer," and they would tell me a lawyer joke,
Yeah.
which started with, what do you call 1,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah.
A good start,
Yeah.
and it was like, ouch. It's
Yeah.
like,
Ouch.
it's like, there's value here. We
Yeah.
provide, the legal community provides value. And so,
Absolutely.
one of the things that I did was I sent out emails to 600 past clients,
Hmm.
and I was overwhelmed by the response.
Hmm.
And these were collaborative clients and mediation clients, and people sent me pictures of their new partners. People
Ah.
sent me pictures of their new family, their new kids, and they just said, thank you.
Hmm.
Thank you for doing what you do. And that's the
Hmm.
feedback that keeps me going, of
Yeah.
saying, you know what? That's the validation, verification, that
Hmm.
when I had that epiphany in 2008
Yeah.
and laid down that sword and shield in 2010, that I was on the right path.
Hmm.
So that hasn't changed. It's only become stronger feeling
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? Because if you leave somebody, what regardless of the business, if you leave them with a a fair outcome and they have a great interaction, you'd expect maybe repeat clients, referrals, all the other things. How do you? I'm curious. How do you? You mentioned you have multiple associates and that you're growing. Like, how do you take kind of what's in your heart and your mission, and how do you kind of weave that into the DNA of the firm? Like, how's that journey been for you?
That's been educational on my part.
Yeah.
It's like, I can do this stuff. I'm good at this stuff. How do
It's
we teach
weird, isn't
others?
it? Like
It
for
is.
me, it's the same thing. Like I didn't come intuitively. It wasn't like I was a financial advisor before Mission Matters, right? So I'm like, I didn't think about like vision or how to get that into it, the DNA of an organization, things like that. It's a trip, right?
It is. And then that question of, how do I teach others to do this work
Yeah.
and have the passion and so I'm finding new tools,
Hmm.
of and technology is great because you can, tape record uh, faux client consultations and
Yeah.
then debrief those and go over those.
Hmm.
Um, Conversations, checking in with employees on a
Hmm.
regular basis and check, how you doing today? Hey,
Yeah.
thanks. How did, what are your challenges,
Hmm.
this week? What questions do you have? What successes have you had this week?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's checking in with your employees. And see, one of my things that's really important is exceeding client expectations.
Hmm.
Okay, I want to give them something. I want to figure out what they want. I want to give that to them plus something that they don't expect,
Hmm.
and it could be one of our coffee mugs that has "Let it begin," peacemaking, "Let it begin with me" on it. Um, but I do that with the associates and staff as well.
Hmm.
Of try to exceed their expectations, of giving them the opportunity to be a peacemaker, not a litigator, at
Hmm.
a much earlier age than I was able to jump into it.
Hmm.
So I think it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, definitely. And a legacy, right? Because if you can in turn teach people to do it and then they can in turn teach others to do it, it's just one of those positive things, in my opinion, or positive approaches that can spread, right? And inspire and give others the idea that, hey, there is a different way. And the people that are supposed to be attracted to the methodology or maybe to the mindset, like they will be, right?
Yeah, they will be. And that's the fourth C that's coming in the future, is this concept of culture change.
Mm.
Is the perception of lawyers, as someone you want to stay away from. It's like,
Mhm.
no peacemaking, and conflict resolution, whether it's in the family law setting or whether it's
Mhm.
probate or whether it's neighbor,
Mhm.
neighbor issues. Um, you know, it's building as opposed to tearing apart.
Mhm.
And I will choose building, and bridge building,
Yeah.
any day of the week.
And so as you continue on this mission and as you spread the word of collaboration, like you mentioned social media and thinking about things like that and how to get the message out, and like what are some takeaways that you've learned along the way of really of pioneering in this area? What are some takeaways?
I think being clear on the mission,
Hmm.
Adam, is really important, and you get feedback on social media stuff that
Hmm.
goes out. Um, Taking the opportunity when you're invited to go out and speak with a group,
Mhm.
get out there and speak with the group.
Yeah.
To take all questions. One of the things that happened, you know, in the last year was that I was invited to teach a collaborative uh, law school class.
Mm.
So this fall, I'm in the law school teaching collaborative law
Mhm.
to second, 2L and 3L law students.
Mm.
So get in, put stuff out there. You got to try it because I've never done this before. So I
Yeah.
get to try it, take the feedback, use that feedback to massage the message
Mm.
and put it back out there clear,
Mhm.
in whatever form that you can find.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because as you're mentioning these takeaways, I think about, as you know, any entrepreneur, any business, and as they kind of go on that journey and they kind of recalibrate, they see if they're on the right path, and then you have all these moving pieces, and you're wondering, like, sometimes, you know, you have your roadmap, obviously your business plan, all things that you're doing to make sure the business is running, but in terms of like thinking about what's next, or those next steps, or how do you continue innovating, how do you continue pushing the envelope on things like you mentioned, like exceeding client expectations, like how do you keep pushing the envelope to get better and better?
And it's a daily practice,
Yeah.
right? I mean, every day is a new opportunity. You know, every phone call, every client who gives me a call, they come in and say, I've heard this. You've probably heard this 1,000
Mhm.
times.
Mhm.
And Adam, I approach each of those with beginner's mind,
Mm.
because in fact, I've never heard that story before, because
Mhm.
it's coming from that person who is now
Yeah.
sitting with me at my desk. And, you know, in terms of building and creating networks,
Mhm.
so much of my work comes from referrals.
Mm.
So it's not only the clients that I do that with, it's
Mhm.
the other attorneys that I work with, or the
Mhm.
coaches, the mental health practitioners, or the
Mhm.
financial neutrals, or financial planners, the CEOs,
Mm.
you know, I am um, building connection
Yeah.
with them. And you know, you get more with kindness than you do with vinegar. You
Mm.
know, more with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in entering into relation with people,
Mm.
it's incredible. I mean, if you look at my client reviews, you know, on
Mm.
one of the attorney websites that I use, you know, they're just 95-star reviews,
Wow.
you know, of somehow I touch them in a way, you know, that um, encourage them to let the public know, let the
Mhm.
world know
Mhm.
that they had a good experience with the Seattle Collaborative Law Center. And if
Mm.
I can leave that lasting, you know, evidence or message,
Yeah.
I know I'm on the right path.
And that concept of beginner's mind, I love that you bring that up. And that's the idea for those, if you missed it, what he said. It's the idea that you're, you know, every person's unique that's in front of you. So for example, you know, as a, you know, company, I've done over 5,000 interviews now, but I try to enter every interview with beginner's mind as well. Like, it's like, because why? Because I've never done this interview before. It's me and Kevin. Like, this is our first time doing this particular interview together, and this is our first time having this conversation. So it is something new, and it is special, and it is unique. And I think there's a lot of layers of lessons in that one, Kevin, especially for people that are in any type of services business. Because, you know, you may have think you saw a certain scenario once before, twice, or 1,000 times before, but it's unique because there's a unique individual in front of you that you haven't heard it from them yet, right?
It is. And I think the biggest takeaway from that is that if we close ourselves off to this new
Mhm.
authentic being that we're meeting, we're missing an opportunity to learn more and become better at what we do.
Absolutely.
So you're very good at my three C's, and you're exhibiting the fourth C as well. Okay, because you know you've got
Stop giving them all the C's, Kevin. Stop. That's
sorry
for the next
you've
interview, man. Now I
you,
can't even ask you questions about the book because you already gave them too much.
sorry, they're just all the teasers.
Yeah,
So
those are teasers. We're gonna go deep on the next one. Leave these C's out, Kevin. You're giving them all. No, I'm just playing. Seriously, it's great that you did,
absolutely.
and the information's awesome. And what I like about it is that you're living it. This isn't, you didn't just sit down one day and say, let's come up with some C's. Like, you're living it,
No,
and you practice it on a daily basis, and that's how you're getting better, and that's how you're providing more and more value for your clients.
absolutely. And it is interesting how just all of a sudden this stuff comes to you. And
Mm.
right, that's another really important thing of, you know, when you're in the pool, you know, or you're on your bike or something, and something comes to your mind of saying, ooh, that's a good idea. Write it
Mm.
down.
Yeah.
Okay. Explore it, embrace it, because I think the C's came to me during a board meeting. I'm on the board of the International Collaborative Organization at this point, and just the energy that you get from being around like-minded people who are excited about the work that you're doing. Holy smokes. The epiphanies come left and right. And just a thing about epiphanies is one of my early trainings where I was with the trainer just blew my socks off. It just introduced stuff, that was like, just blew my mind. And so I'm in the lobby and I'm sitting there at a table and he comes by and he sits with us and he's sitting next to me. And I turned around and looked at him and I said, Woody, how often do you have an epiphany? And he goes, oh, every day.
Wow.
Right? And I think we all can have epiphanies every day.
Yeah. We're paying attention.
Yeah. And we're open to it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we are walking in fear and we're not curious, we're less likely to have an epiphany. But, if someone could bottle epiphanies, I think that would be great.
Oh, it's great. Well, Kevin, I just have to say it has been great having you on the show, getting to know more about your practice, your approach, how it was developed. We got a little bit of teaser of what's coming in the book. As I mentioned before, multiple times, we'll be bringing you back on the show for the audience so that we could do a deep dive into your reading or to your writing. But for now, I just have to ask, what's next for you? What's next for you? What's next for your firm?
So, we're just going to continue to take care of clients.
Yeah.
We're going to look for growing opportunities. I think an exciting thing, Adam, is I'm seeing things that I haven't thought about. Life is a journey, right? It's a river. And I've come to a bend in the river where all of a sudden I see, here I am, my office, surrounded by the things I love. And I realize at some point I'm going to be bringing in other people to take this space while I am doing something different. I'm training, I'm teaching, I'm talking, I'm writing, I'm managing. But we're growing. I think that's where my next area of growth is going to be, is, because this concept of culture change, of really going back to the mission of changing the way law is practiced, which involves, clients taking over their own legacy building and empowering clients. That's where I see myself going at this point.
Yeah. It's great. And if somebody wants to follow up and learn more about working with you and your team, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, please go to my website at www.seattleclc.com. And that's the Seattle Collaborative Law Center. We're in Seattle, Washington, or email me directly at kevin@seattleclc.com. I would love to connect with you.
Fantastic. And we'll put all that information into the show notes so that our audience can just click on the link and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time viewing or listening to a Mission Matters episode or engaging with the platform, we're all about bringing out entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them share their mission, why they do what they do, the reasoning behind their mission, how they're executing, and really what we can all learn and gain from their journey and their story so that we can all grow together. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or engaging to you, hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up for you on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Kevin, really, it's been a pleasure working with you, and look forward to the next time we get to do an interview. So thanks again for coming on.
Adam, thank you very much. I look forward to it.